My name is Henry Collins. I am 78 years old, and today I am finally telling the truth. Not the polite truth I told at dinner parties, not the edited truth I told my children, not the comfortable truth I told myself so I could sleep at night. The real truth, the kind that comes when the house is quiet, when the clocks sound too loud, when the woman you spent your life beside is no longer breathing next to you. I wasted 40 years. I didn't waste them on crime. I didn't waste them on addiction. I didn't even waste them on another woman. I wasted them by being present but not available, by being loyal but not loving, by providing but never arriving. And I didn't realize it until my wife looked at me on her deathbed and said 6 words that split my life in half. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where all lies begin.
I worked hard. I never missed a bill. I came home every night. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't hit. I didn't disappear. By the standards of my father's generation, I was a model man. That's the lie we were taught, that love is measured in hours worked, not hearts held. That silence is maturity, that feelings are indulgent, that a roof over her head replaces your arms around her shoulders. My wife's name was Margaret. Everyone called her Maggie. She had a laugh that arrived before she did, a way of folding towels that made no sense but somehow felt right, and eyes that could soften a room without asking permission. She married me when she was 23. I was 26 and convinced life was a ladder. You climbed it. You didn't stop to admire the view. I told her once I'm established, things will slow down. She smiled and said, "Okay." That smile carried me for decades. The first time Maggie tried to tell me something was wrong, we had been married 7 years. 7 years of routines. 7 years of dinners eaten separately. 7 years of "I'm tired" replacing "How are you?" She stood in the kitchen one night while I read the paper. I remember this because I remember being annoyed. She said, "Henry, do you still love me?" I didn't look up. I laughed softly and said, "Of course I do. Why would you ask something like that?" There was a pause, not the kind you notice, the kind you dismiss. She said, "I just miss you." I folded the paper and said something that still makes me sick. "I'm right here." That's when she went quiet, not angry. Quiet, not dramatic quiet, the dangerous kind, the kind that means she has learned you will not hear her. Love doesn't usually end in a fight. It ends in adjustments. She stopped asking me to sit with her, stopped showing me things she was excited about, stopped waiting up. She adapted, and I mistook adaptation for contentment. That's what men like me do. We confuse absence of complaint with presence of happiness. Years passed, children arrived, responsibilities multiplied. Life grew loud enough to drown out the quiet ache I refused to hear. Maggie became the emotional center of our family. She remembered birthdays, smoothed conflicts, listened when the kids cried. I was the structure, strong, stable, distant. I wore that distance like armor. When Maggie turned 50, she asked for something simple. "Can we take a trip? Just us?" I checked my calendar before checking her face. I said, "Maybe next year. Work's crazy right now." She nodded. That nod still haunts me, because in it was resignation, not disappointment, not anger, acceptance. That's when a woman stops fighting for closeness. That's when the marriage becomes a partnership instead of a love story. I didn't know it then. I know it now. By the time we reached our 60s, Maggie and I were polite strangers with shared history. We knew each other's habits, but not each other's thoughts. She would sit by the window in the evenings, watching nothing in particular. I would ask, "You okay?" She would say, "Just tired." I believed her, because believing her required no effort. When the doctor said cancer, I heard logistics, appointments, treatments, insurance. Maggie heard something else. She heard a clock start ticking. She became softer, more present, more intentional. I became more efficient. I handled everything except her heart. She once said during treatment, "I wish we had talked more." I squeezed her hand and said, "We have time." Another lie. The night Maggie died, the room was quiet except for the machine beside her bed. Her breathing was shallow. I sat in the chair, exhausted, scrolling through my phone. She whispered my name, not sharply, not urgently, softly. "Henry." I stood and leaned close. Her eyes searched my face like she was trying to memorize it. She smiled. That same smile she gave me 40 years earlier, and she said the words that destroyed me. "I waited for you." That's it. 6 words. No accusation, no anger, no tears, just truth. "I waited for you." She didn't mean the room. She didn't mean that night. She meant her life. She meant the evenings, the years, the chances. She waited for me to arrive emotionally. I never did. She closed her eyes after that. Grief doesn't always come as sadness. Sometimes it comes as clarity. I saw my life the way it actually was. A man who showed up everywhere except where it mattered most. A man who thought love was automatic once promised. A man who believed the time was unlimited. I sat there holding her hand, realizing I had been late to my own marriage. 40 years late. If you are younger than me, listen carefully. Love is not something you schedule for later. There is no when things calm down. There is only now, and the dangerous illusion that tomorrow is guaranteed. I would trade every promotion, every accomplishment, every title I ever earned for one ordinary evening where I truly sat with my wife and let her feel seen. But time does not negotiate. I am 78 years old, and this confession is not finished, because regret doesn't end with realization. It continues with memory. After Maggie died, the house didn't feel empty. That surprised me. It felt crowded. Every room was full of her voice, her routines, her pauses. Her mug still sat where she left it. Her cardigan still hung on the back of the chair like she'd returned for it. I walked through that house like a guest in my own life, and that's when I began to understand something far more painful than losing my wife. I hadn't just failed Maggie. I had taught my children how to live without closeness. A few weeks after the funeral, my son Daniel came over. Daniel is a good man, responsible, quiet, too quiet. We sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee in silence, the same silence Maggie and I had perfected over decades. At one point I said, "So, how are you holding up?" He nodded and said, "I'm fine." Then he added, "You?" I nodded too. "I'm fine." And there it was. 2 men sitting across from each other, lying politely. I realized something then that made my chest ache. Daniel wasn't cold. He was trained. He learned emotional distance from watching me. I used to think being a father meant providing stability, keeping things calm, not overreacting, not being dramatic. What I didn't understand is that children learn how to love by observing how their parents love each other. They learn whether emotions are welcome, whether vulnerability is safe, whether connection is prioritized or postponed. Daniel watched me walk past Maggie when she wanted to talk, My daughter Claire watched me nod while my mind was elsewhere. They learned that love meant coexistence, not engagement. And now, as adults, they carried that blueprint into their own relationships. A month after Maggie passed, Claire stayed late one evening. We were washing dishes together. She broke the silence and said, Mom used to wait up for you. I froze. She continued, she'd sit on the couch pretending to read. I swallowed. Claire turned to me and said, she always hoped you'd ask her about her day. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to explain. Instead, I whispered, I didn't know. Claire looked at me gently and said, I think she knew you didn't. That sentence hurt more than any accusation could have, because she was right. Maggie didn't expect me to change. She just hoped. And hope, stretched too thin, becomes quiet suffering. People think marriages end with slammed doors. Most don't. They end with unanswered invitations, delayed conversations, emotional deferrals. I'll listen later. Let's talk another time. I'm too tired tonight. Later never came. And one day, neither did she. Loneliness isn't being alone. Loneliness is realizing the people you love learn to live without needing you. I had built a life where my presence was optional, efficient, reliable, but not essential. That's the consequence of emotional absence. People adapt. They stop reaching. I thought listening was optional. I thought affection was understood without being expressed. I thought silence was peaceful. Now I know better. Silence is only peaceful when it's chosen together. Otherwise, it's abandonment disguised as calm. I was proud of how composed I was, how unshakable. What I didn't realize was that my emotional restraint made others feel unsafe expressing theirs. Maggie once cried quietly in the bedroom while I watched television. I told myself, she'll come talk when she's ready. She never did. She learned I wouldn't meet her there. No one tells men that love requires participation, not just presence. That being a husband means being emotionally interruptible. That careers applaud distance, but marriages suffocate under it. I thought I was protecting my family from stress. I was teaching them isolation. I waited for you. She wasn't talking about romance. She was talking about attention. She waited for me to ask questions without glancing at a clock, to sit without fixing, to listen without solving, to arrive without planning my exit. She waited for me to show up as a human, not a provider. Regret doesn't soften with time. It sharpens. It replays moments you thought were insignificant, a dinner you skipped, a sigh you ignored, a story you half heard. I would give anything to relive one ordinary Tuesday night and do it differently, but life doesn't offer revisions, only consequences. Your strength is not in your silence. Your legacy is not your stability. Your family doesn't need a pillar. They need a presence. Talk now. Listen now. Love loudly while you still can. There is one memory I avoid more than all the others, not because it's dramatic, but because it was ordinary. Those are the moments that hurt the most, the ones where salvation was possible, where nothing was stopping me except habit.